Hi, I'm Greg Levine, and this is the party line for September the 2nd, 2011, and you know, I'm really not this monomaniacal. I mean, every week I think this will be a week where I get to talk about something else, something besides the Fukushima nuclear disaster and the political and safety implications here in the United States. Every week I think there won't be perhaps enough to write about or talk about, and then lo and behold, as I start digging, there is plenty. And while, you know, I'd frankly have a thing or two to say about, say, the president's process fight fail this week with Congress, let me note that the failure was in having a process fight at all, not the outcome. He looks political and bad no matter what day the speech is on now. But, you know, plenty of people have plenty to say about Obama and his latest fight over nothing. But far too few people seem to have that much to say about nuclear issues, or at least that much to say in terms of connecting all of the various events around the world and trying to distill some sort of implications from that. So that's what I'm going to try to do a little bit today. First off, last week saw the visit from Hurricane Irene here on the Atlantic seaboard. As the hurricane approached, nuclear facilities in 9 states, some 20 reactors, took steps to prepare. Some decreased their output. For instance, in North Carolina, what was it called? The Brunswick plant. Excuse me. The Brunswick plant decreased output to 70%. Oyster Creek in New Jersey on Barnegat Bay, they shut down completely. Some plants, well, Millstone in Connecticut took one of its reactors down to 70%, another down to 50%. Other plants like Surrey in Virginia or Indian Point, just 35 miles north of New York City, chose not to decrease output at all. Now, the implications of this are that when you're running at full capacity and you have to shut down because of an emergency, it produces much more stress on your system, on the reactor, on the cooling systems, on the rods that are inserted to as they call it, scram the fission reaction. And if you're operating at a lower capacity, then to stop abruptly is easier and faster. I liken it to slamming the brakes on your car. Much less of a problem when you're going 35 as opposed to going 60. Problem in both cases, but you can do it faster and with more control if you're going 35 than if you have to do it at 60. And the wear and tear on your car, obviously, will be less at the slower speed. One plant that decided not to reduce its output at all in the face of Hurricane Irene was the Calvert Cliffs plant in Maryland, Lusby, Maryland, if anyone knows where that is. They were going full speed when the winds from Hurricane Irene tore off some metal siding, sent it flying into a transformer, and caused a, quote, unexpected explosion. One site was wondering what an expected explosion would be at a nuclear plant, but neither here nor there. The explosion, the event, caused the plant to scram. It had to shut down, automatically shut down, quite immediately, really. That's bad for the plant, stresses the reactor, bad for the company, Constellation Energy, that operates it, but perhaps good in light of what else happened that night. You see, the rain from Hurricane Irene apparently got into the exhaust funnel of one of the backup diesel generators. These backup generators have to provide power to a nuclear facility in case they go off the grid or some interruption in their normal power supply. As I noted last week, the insanity of nuclear power generation is that you need a steady stream of electricity to generate safely a steady stream of electricity. Well, this backup diesel generator had water in it and would not have functioned if it had been needed. It fortunately was not needed, but if things had gone perhaps in a different order, or a different part of the plant had been hit by flying debris, perhaps it would have been. And it's one of these sort of 1-2, it could never possibly happen kind of punches, the kind of thing that you saw to cataclysmic results in Japan, of course, the kind of thing that everyone here in the United States poo-poos, and will continue to poo-poo because at Calvert Cliffs, nothing theoretically happened. The thing is that this is not a revelation, at least to the NRC. You see, the problem is that the NRC has been looking at Calvert Cliffs all year, and there are several problems with the way Calvert Cliffs is operated, but we don't get to know that because the NRC says that would be a security risk if they told us where the flaws in the Calvert Cliffs system were. You can dig into some of Calvert Cliffs' reports on the NRC website. I don't advise it unless you're having trouble sleeping. That is a very clear example of hurricane. Meanwhile, earthquake. As you remember, last week we were discussing what happened at the North Anna plant in Virginia as a result of the Mineral Virginia earthquake. It was revealed this week that, well, maybe the ground shook more than the plant was designed to withstand. We're supposed to find out the results of the shake plate readings by the end of today, the 2nd. But also noted this week was that the casks, the dry casks that store spent fuel at North Anna moved. The vertical ones, weighing 115 tons each containing over 30 spent fuel rods. These dry casks moved anywhere from 1 to 4 inches. 25 of the 27 casks moved during the earthquake. Now, that in and of itself is interesting, but maybe not horrific. It depends on how you look at it. You see, the thing is that dry casks are infinitely superior to spent fuel pools. As noted in Japan, the spent fuel pools lost power to their cooling systems, the water boiled down, the rods were exposed, hydrogen was cracked from the water, explosions took place damaging the reactor buildings. These are the sort of dangers that happen with spent fuel pools, similar although in a different degree, to what could happen inside a reactor vessel, but without the actual containment vessel, when power is interrupted or damage occurs to the cooling system. Dry casks just rely on the natural flow of air, and they usually take rods from spent fuel pools and put them in dry casks after they cool off a little more. I'm reading like 10 to 15 years after they've served their function inside the reactor. You can see how long-term these issues are. Anyway, the casks were not damaged, but they did move. So far they're telling me, or they're telling everyone, that there's no unnatural release of radiation. There were also some newer casks, which are horizontal casks, and they didn't move, but they did show some cosmetic damage to the external concrete. I don't know what that means. I think we still need to investigate exactly what that means. The North Anna plant remains shut down, but the dry cask issue again underlines the fact that the NRC's task force report post-Fukushima did nothing to address the issue of moving the vast quantities of spent fuel that are in liquid pools into dry cask storage, and to a bigger extent moving them into a centralized, long-term storage facility. Just not here, not in the nation's plans. The Obama administration put an end to the Yucca Mountain facility in Nevada, excuse me. So that's not addressed, continues not to be addressed. And I should point out also on that sort of broad, giant view of the whole thing, the fact that Oyster Creek could decide to shut down, but Calvert Cliffs didn't, says something else about the way we regulate the nuclear industry, which is that it's up to each individual company and each individual facility to decide what they're going to do in the face of a multi-region, multi-state, predictable natural disaster. And that, to me, speaks volumes about the inadequacies of our nuclear regulatory system. One more point I'll make, and again, much more in the post. I blow this out to a great extent. There's a really interesting short video that I linked to on Al Jazeera about the nuclear sewage problem now accumulating in Japan. Very disturbing. Imagine this. The sewage has become highly radioactive. It's accumulating at plants far away, hundreds of miles away from the Fukushima reactor. and they can't do anything with it. Used to be they would ship it out and use it in like concrete or in fertilizer, but it's too radioactive for that. So instead they're just piling it up at the sewage processing plants and covering it with plastic tarps and saying, we'll deal with it later. The workers are being told there's no imminent danger, but Geiger counters say otherwise, I'm afraid. And the Japanese government says, this isn't yet a problem we need to deal with. Just another one of those what could possibly go wrong things, events, horrors that come part and parcel with any reliance on nuclear power for electrical generation. Keep all that in mind, because that's the party line. I'll see you next week.